I wanted to give the superintendent a chance for any remarks he might want.
First of all, I want to thank everybody for showing up this evening. We are not dismantling the program. Okay, first of all, I want to clarify that because we had a really good meeting this morning, and I believe that the message is very clear. Our concerns was, okay, no matter what kind of program you have to provide some services to ELL kids. There has to be some structured English for ELL kids. That's just the way, we can agree to disagree on that or whatever. But the fact is, we commissioned a very extensive study and it's going to be done by the end of this year with Stanford on how all our programs are serving ELL kids. Our preliminary results are showing that, that's an area of concern. You have been addressing that area, so I want to commend you in the fact that you have been doing that, okay? All we're trying to make sure is that when we talk about equity in this school and access, we talk about all kids, just like you do. But what we were trying to do is assure that that's going on. We've seen what your model is. We understand that model, and we believe that we're going to allow your school to be somewhat of a hybrid, and we'll call it a pilot, because we want to see how it turns out. I'm not running for office, and no offense to the people that do run for office, I'm quoting the vice president, because as I recall, he hasn't kept all his promises. But that's a different story. We won't get into politics. But, the superintendent doesn't run for office. So I can generally tell you that we could do many of the things that you suggested. But one of the things that I think would be unrealistic for us to, and be less than honest, if we could tell you that we're going to go out and test 700 kids in 2 weeks, language proficiency. That's not going to happen. I wish I could tell you, I get it. Obviously, in the future, that's something that we will be able to look at and examine. But in this short time period, we're going to have to think of other creative ways to look at that issue. So I'm not going to mislead you to believe, so that when you leave here, thinking that we believe that even with that, your data will still come out fine in terms of the 1/3, okay? We really believe that's our goal, and as you know, you have 22% right now. So we're pretty confident that will work out. But that, I don't want anybody leaving here with certain commitments that we can't keep. The other issue is the siblings. Obviously, we've bent over backwards to try to accommodate the sibling situation. 99.999%, siblings get in. But no district is going to be in a position to absolutely 100% guarantee that will ever happen, because unfortunately all kinds of other stuff happens. And once you make a guarantee, then you have to deliver. And we will do our best, always try to deliver in that, because we do think that's critical. I'm a parent, that's important. But I also think that we can't ever offer anybody in this district a guarantee of everything working out perfectly, because there's a lot of other factors that unfortunately play into that. But we do our best to meet that, and I will tell you will have that commitment from us. So I think that what we're saying is that we think that it could work for you, having the 1/3 model. We think that we could work with you, and we have, and you have shown us clearly, even in your teaching schedule, how you will provide that structured English for the kids who are ELL students. So I think that this is an opportunity to really create a win-win situation. I don't think that there's a very much difference in what we're talking about here. But I do think that we're making the commitment to you now that we do need a small work group to work with us, with our staff, in making sure that we check this out, and that it's an effective program, and you have been an effective program. If we look at the results of your ELL kids, you've done well with them. So I don't see this is going to be as big a hurdle as unfortunately I think it initially came across. That's not what the intent is. And you do have that kind of commitment on all of us working towards making this a really great program, which it has always been. I know. I send people from all over the country to go visit your school. So No one has to tell me how great it is. It's absolutely great, and we want you to continue doing the great work that you've been doing. Thank you.
I would like to acknowledge former school board member Dan Kelly, who has joined us in the back of the room. And also Ms. Sato, the principal of Alsfong U. Next visit next week. Okay, questions and comments from the board. Commissioner Morales.
Yeah, first I want to thank the staff. This represents a tremendous amount of work, and today's presentation was very helpful in understanding what the enrollment numbers are. I also want to thank the Alsfong U community for coming out and being very local and active on this issue. In terms of my own background, I've been involved with the Japanese Bilingual Bicultural Program. My parents were among the founders who worked with other Japanese Americans meeting in living rooms of how to get this program launched in 1972. So I have an understanding of the tremendous investment that families and community members make into this kind of program, the volunteering, the fundraising, and together with your excellent staff, you really are a signature program for our school district, and I want to congratulate you for that. I have 4 points that I want to make. I just want to confirm with staff, and I don't need an answer today, but if the balanced immersion model of 1/3 EL allows us to meet any obligations under Lau versus Nichols, so that's my one legally oriented question. Secondly, there's been a proposal that, it's unrealistic to test 700 applicants, but there may be a way to test the English proficiency of those students who are made an offer to the school. So that's a much smaller universe of people, and it is a check on whether they're actually English proficient or not. And then thirdly, I wanted to confirm with the Alsfong U community. I know that in some of the letters there's talk about a sibling guarantee, and as the superintendent has said, we don't guarantee that for any school. And I just want to confirm that Alsfong U just wants to have the same standard of sibling preference and is not asking for a guarantee which would exceed the commitment that we make to all of our schools. So I would like to have a response, perhaps from a member of the community on that question. And then I just, the dual language model does not, to me, feel like a good fit for this. We just went through a very agonizing discussion about middle school pathways and finally landed on a 6-year transition because people who signed up for their kindergarten would need to transition through before we introduced what middle school they were going to go to for sure. In the case of Alsfong U, it would require a 9-year transition because, of course, people who signed up to the program, to the school, thought they were going into a particular model, not the dual language model. So I can't support a program change that has so little support in the community when it appears that, based on the superintendent's meetings today, an alternative is available. But I do want confirmation on that sibling guarantee issue that Alsfong U is asking to be treated the same as other schools and not exceptionally.
Would you like to address that?
Yeah, so I guess first of all I want to say that the word guarantee is strong. I agree with that. We don't want that to be a roadblock. The issue here is preference in terms of the sibling preference versus target language cohort preference. So that's actually what we're asking for. We're asking for the sibling preference to be higher than the language cohort preference. So let me be clear about that. So the way, at least for the language programs, the way it works is that they have 2/3, 1/3 cohorts, for example. And when they fill these cohorts, the question is what happens if you have more siblings than the cohort allows? For example, if at Alsfong U we have 3 kindergarten classrooms, 22 students each, which means that you would allow, let's just make it easy. Let's say that it's 1/3, 2/3, and 1/3 English speakers. That means that one cohort group would allow up to 22 native English speakers. But what if you have 23 siblings who fall into that category? Do you deny access to that one sibling? Or do you allow that sibling to enter and have a slight skew in the cohort group? And so what we're asking for is to allow that slight skew in the cohort group.
Okay, I don't want to get into a discussion between the community and staff. I mean, Mr. Fokin, do you want to clarify how we treat siblings in our other language pathways?
Sure, Commissioners. At our other schools, the sibling cohort is a tiebreaker. And if the sibling, it hasn't happened yet that we have had a school that had an overwhelming number of siblings in one cohort group to push them out. But last year, I shared the data with Alice Fontaine and shared the number of siblings that fell within each cohort group, and we adjusted them a little bit to accommodate all of the siblings. However, allowing this plan to happen would be different than our models at our other dual immersion programs, because at our dual immersion programs, such as our Korean immersion program, if we have 15 students who are required to be in the cohort group and we have 16 siblings, then the 16th student would not gain entrance into the school. They would be placed on a waiting list, and time has shown that we've been able to accommodate all of our siblings. But that has only been one occasion in the past 20 years that we're aware of that has occurred. It was at Lilienthal, where we had more siblings in that cohort group.
No. It's board discussion time. I'm sorry. I mean, Mr. Fokin is our staff person in charge of the Educational Placement Center, so he is clarifying our policy for us.
And just to piggyback on Commissioner Marassi's question, as far as testing students after assignment letters go out, that has never been done in the school district, so we already know that a larger majority of the applicants are siblings. So if we test them, they could either fall as proficient in English or non-proficient in English. And then would we then revoke offers to families that have received assignment to Alice Fontaine? That's a hard pill to swallow. You can really revoke assignments to families that had a criteria set that you're required to fill out this home language survey, and based on that, potentially you could lose your assignment to a school. So that really needs to be addressed and looked at. There's some ramifications.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Moffett, do you have a question?
I just had one request from the staff. Can we get, by grade level, the ethnic breakdown of house funding, please?
Sure. I'll be happy to do that.
Commissioner Wins, did you have any more questions or comments?
Yes, I want to ask one more question and I want to make a few comments. The first thing is that to further clarify the sibling issue, it appears, or what I can gather from what has been said, that the sibling issue, the worry that that siblings would not fare as well or be less likely for all of them to get in, is I believe related to the presumption that we were going to do a 1/3, 1/3, 1/3 grade, 3 different pools, and that would, again, I'm presuming that existing families in the schools who are English only, their younger siblings, incoming kindergartners, might not get in during the transition period because that's now the majority, that's 80% of the school, and they would be limited to 1/3 of the kindergarten spots. I don't know if that's correct, but that's what from listening to everything, that's what I'm getting. And I also am understanding, and I have to say that I'm not in favor for the staff, with all due respect, telling us that in order to have a highly functional, effective school, we need to limit the number of English-only students to 1/3, when we already have a highly effective school for both English learners and English-only students, and there is no such limitation. And this school was and remains under a design which is primarily for English-speaking students to be immersed in Cantonese and later Mandarin. So I'm not interested in that, and it sounded to me like the superintendent was saying what we are now proposing is something as far as the balance of language abilities, like what the school is asking for, which is to do a pool 1/3 for English learners. So that's all correct. If I heard all that accurately, then I'm in favor of that. I am not in
He's nodding, by the way.
school admission model because I don't see any reason to have to do that based on all the information that we've been given. That's all.
I think everybody has had their say. Deputy Superintendent Carranza, did you have any comments? Okay. So I want to thank you all for coming. I think that I want to say I really appreciate that staff clearly heard the concerns from community and has conveyed some more flexibility than I think people assumed was going to be coming out of the district at first. So I appreciate that, and I think that we are still, even though we have been, this program has been in place for a long time, and we've been doing language programs for a long time in various ways, we're still sort of figuring out what is the optimal balance for our programs. I mean, we are under a serious obligation to make sure that we're serving English learners wherever they are. And I think my chief concern that I didn't realize until this all came up is that right now there is an incentive for families to lie about their home language status in order to get into a very, very high-performing program. And that is concerning to me. So I think however we resolve this, we need to make sure that we remove the incentive for families to tell us something about the language they speak at home that is not true, because that's not in the best interest of kids. And I'm hearing that from the LSU community as well, so I think we all agree on that. The sibling issue, I'm hearing that there's a small distinction between what the district is saying about its policy and what you're advocating to us about what you think should happen. I'm not in favor of treating LSU any differently than we do any other school, but we do have an assignment policy that prioritizes siblings, and will continue to prioritize siblings as far as I can see. Yes, there is a slight possibility that at some point in the future that could mean that one sibling would not initially be offered admission to the school, and we would have to deal with that. And in my experience in these cases, I have seen this happen once or twice over the past few years. I have seen that the placement office really works with families individually, and I think every situation that I've seen where a sibling was not initially offered admission to the older sibling's school, it has eventually been resolved to everybody's satisfaction. So while I hear your concern about that, and I share the concern, I certainly don't want to put a family in the position of having one sibling at one school and another sibling at another school. I can't, I agree with what the superintendent said. We cannot treat different schools differently. We have to have a consistent policy. I mean, Mr. Fokin's job is hard enough. If we start creating exceptions and treating different schools differently, it will be impossible. So, I think that's all my thoughts at the moment. It sounds like we still have a little bit of work to do as far as figuring out the next steps, but it sounds as if the dialogue has really started between staff and community. But I also think, Ms. Desmond, that for a future curriculum meeting, I mean, I think that we need to look, I don't know when we're going to get this data out of Stanford, but I do think we need to look at how our English learners are doing in all the different programs that we have serving them, because it sounds like they're doing very well at LSU, and that's great, and we should put that in our data bank as, one successful place for them to be, but I am increasingly concerned about how English learners are doing in our dual language immersion programs, and also in just how are they doing in our English only programs where they're getting targeted ELD. I think it's all over the map, and some schools are doing well, and some schools are not really getting what they should be getting. So I think the board needs to continue to look very, very carefully at that, and maybe when we have some data, we could bring this back to the curriculum committee. Okay, any further thoughts? Yeah.
But if I understood it correctly, this small working group is going to meet again in the next week or two. Is that correct? You can just shake your head. Yes, I got it. And maybe it sounds like that might be an ongoing process. So maybe in about a month or so, can we have just a memo? I think would be sufficient to the board about just how things are going. I would appreciate that. Thank you. And I want to get on the tour. Yes, please.
Tuesdays.
Oh, thank you.
Tuesday morning, anytime.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you all for coming. We're going to move on to the next item. Okay.